All right, expert authority world. I don't know if you've ever felt like you had something inside of you wanted to share or you wanted to be successful. But let me ask you, do you want success or do you want significance? Do you want to leave a lasting footprint, a ripple, whatever you want to call it? It doesn't really matter. Catch the concept. We're not going to live forever, and what you do in this life matters. And that is why I'm super excited today to have Vincent Rush, and we're going to be talking about significance versus success. And he is a former naval officer. He is a mentor, a coach, a speaker trainer. You've even seen him on ABC News for his product. I'm super excited because I've known him close to 20 years and he's done a lot for me personally. He's helped thousands of people, and I know you're going to not only learn a lot, but you're going to be laughing because he's entertaining and he always makes information and content enjoyable. Not everyone does that, and that's a rarity, and I'm excited to bring him up right after we thank our sponsor. How would you like to grow your wealth easier than you think with the change you probably don't notice anyhow automatically? That's why I started the compounding interest snowball investing with acorns and advise you do too. Get started simply and easily today at eainterviews.com/acorns. Here he is, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Vincent Rush. Vince, how are you feeling today? Oh, sorry, Stephen Nick. What is going on here? Really? Here he is, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Vincent Rush. How are you doing today, Vince?
Mario, I'm doing great, buddy. It is good to catch up with you. We go way back, and I've ever since you were a young little lad, basically I would see at conferences and all that, and you were always one of the first people to come up and engage in conversation. And so I've always kind of been a little bit of a fan of yours, just for your ambition, and it's an honor that you would even consider having me on your show. So thank you very much. I'm thrilled to be here. I do want to back up one thing that you said. I was not a naval officer. I was a naval photographer.
Okay.
And so I traveled with USO tours with Shields back in 1983, 84 timeframe. I did a tour with Wayne Newton. So I was a military photojournalist. So I don't want anybody, double checking there and, say, hey, this guy wasn't. No, I wasn't an officer. So, but
well,
thanks for the compliments. That's very nice.
I knew you were Navy, and I appreciate you and thank you for your service. And it takes everyone.
Yeah, that's true. It's an entire community and stuff. When I spent time on an aircraft carrier, so I've seen everything. The guys that worked in the chow hall were just as important as the guys that worked on the flight line.
Well, the honor is mine, and I sincerely meant everything I said. You've made a lasting imprint on my life, and this is a real honor. So thank you for making the time to share with Expert Authority World, because you were one of the first people I put on the list before I even had the show.
Well, and that's an honor too. You've done so well with this show now. I mean, how many years is this that you've been doing these shows?
Couple hundred episodes now.
Yeah. Yeah. And all those episodes live on in perpetuity out there on the internet somewhere. So 40, 50 years from now, your grandkids are going to be, your kids are going to be taking his grandkids. Hey, let me show you Grandpa here and what he used to do before his hair all turned gray and what little he has left of it. So you're going to have those moments.
Well, I appreciate you for painting that picture, because that will be awesome. I want to ask you about significance and not just success. Why do you think so many people chase success, and why would you say it's more important to have significance?
Well, because I think the ROI of life should be happiness. And without true happiness, there really is no success. I often say this, and I think you may have even heard me say this at some point in time, is that I know people that where I grew up in, I know people live in trailers, mobile homes, that I consider to be wealthy, versus people I know that live in mansions in Cincinnati, Ohio, who I consider to be poor. They may be rich because they have a if you have a balance sheet mentality versus a mission mindset, then you measure success by everything the world has taught you. That it's based, your house. If I get a bigger house, we'll be happy. If we have more cars, we'll be happy. If I have more money, we'll be happy. If I'm richer, we'll be happy. And so you're associating and tying all your happiness into external circumstances, and happiness and fulfillment is only found from within. I got one of my best friends that I grew up with is a guy named LD, and Larry was my best man at my wedding. And when I started my own businesses and walked away from the old life, I got a lot of pushback and a lot of criticisms, and a lot of guys made fun of me, because I was getting into the Amway business, because I was building a network and I was the pyramid guy and all that. But my best friend always encouraged me. He says, that ain't for me, Venno, but I know you can do it and you can succeed. And I'm pulling for you. If anybody can do it, you can. That's true friendship. LD, if you looked at him and met him somewhere, he's just a good old boy. But every day he wakes up and he looks in the mirror, he's 100% happy with who he is in here and who God created him to be, because he's living within chasing his purpose. I meet people all the time, and I say, hey, how's it going? And they say, just living a dream. And I'll say, is that right? What's that look like? And most times people can't even tell you what it looks like because they don't know. It's just a colloquial phrase that they say, I'm living a dream. And but if you're not living in pursuit of something bigger than yourself that involves other people, then you're not living a dream. You're living somebody else's dream, or you're living your own nightmare. So I think true significance is making a difference and an impact on other people's life. Mario, you and I have traveled a lot of roads together at different times. And, my wife and I, wonderful wife of over 31 years, we've had a chance to speak around. Thank you very much. And she's my best friend. She had the biggest influence in my life. She was the first person in my life that was constantly telling me how smart she thought I was and what a hard worker she thought I was and how I could do anything I wanted to. And she gave me a reputation to live up to. And but I find that when we sow ourselves in our lives into other people, is that we get so much more of ourselves back. I'm 57 years old now, and knock on wood, I've lived a very blessed life, been very fortunate, got great kids. People ask me, what do you do? What's your most important job? I'm a dad first. I'm a husband, and so forth. That's been the most important thing I've done in my life, is not mess that up. Although I tried many times inadvertently, but fortunately God had a bigger plan for me. But I see so many people at my age now that they've spent their entire lives climbing the proverbial ladder of success the way the world teaches them what success looks like, only to get to that top and look over the edge and find out there's nothing there. And so that's why you'll see a guy in his late 50s, 60s, totally nuke his marriage and his family for a younger girl somewhere. He'll go make stupid decisions or take up vices because he's looking to fill that void. And so, if you chase John Calipari, who coached the UK Wildcats, or still does coach them. I've done photography work for him too. John Calipari told me one time, I said, what's one of the best pieces of advice you give a lot of your young players? And he says, well, I give him a lot of advice. He says, but one of the things I say is chase significance versus success. I said, what do you mean? He goes, if you chase success, you may acquire a certain bit of it, but it'll be short term. It'll be very hard to hang on to because what you grip the tightest tends to slip through your fingers. But if you chase significance, success will hunt you down and attach itself to everything that you do. And significance is not achieved without impacting and having involvement in other people's lives. So that's what I mean by that.
Well, I love that you've always taught that, because whether someone is 30, 50, 70, they can change it at any point in time. So for someone,
it's never too late.
So for someone who's been on that proverbial ladder that you've been talking about, what's one of the best things you could say they could do? I mean, because the blowback I've heard from even my clients or my audience, I want to do XYZ, whether it's publish a book or podcast, whatever the case may be, but they're so attached to that thing because I get it. I've put 20 years into my business, and it's like, do you want to just up and change and everything? And it's like, well, if you're not living the life and you don't like your life, I would say absolutely yes, but I get why people would want to hang on because it's more comfortable and convenient. What's the best thing you could say to someone who's put 10, 20, 30 years into something already and they're not where they want to be?
Yeah, first of all, quit dragging the very worst version of yourself into present day and future endeavors. Just because Mario, you're an optimist, you're an optimistic thinker. You and I grew up reading a lot of the same books, and one of the things that we've learned is that in every adversity is a seed of an equal or greater benefit. And for the person who looks through life through the lens and the perspective of the optimism, and also too, I've got to put a disclaimer on this too. I mean, a lot of it's been my upbringing, my foundation. I myself am proud to say I'm a born again Christian. That's my beliefs. You don't have to be that way. That's my beliefs. Okay. And so I realize it's a bigger purpose for my life. And Rick Warren wrote an excellent book a few years ago called Purpose Driven Life, and changed a lot of lives of a lot of people that were at that point. I read a book a couple of years ago, Mario, and forgive me if I'm going off topic a little bit, but I think it all ties in.
You can say
as
whatever
I said,
you want.
Okay, well, I have respect for your show and your audience, but here it is. I'm 57 years old now. Well, when I was 50, when I was getting ready to turn 50, I was never bothered by turning 40. Didn't bother me when I turned 45. Didn't bother me. But for some reason, 50 was starting to bug me. And when I got to be when I was 49 and about 6 months into being 49, I started eyeing that milepost, that mile marker. And I started thinking, man, I was supposed to have had this by now. I was supposed to have been driving this by now. I was supposed to have been living in this big of a house by now, And I started living in the balance sheets. I started taking inventory of the balance of my life up to that point in time. And I was focused, I all of a sudden started focusing on success and the measure of worldly success. Well, I was actually going through a funk, through a depression. And as I mentioned to you a little bit, I've read 3 books a month for 25 years now. I'm an avid reader. I believe apathy is mediocrity's weapon of choice. And so I was just in a funk. I wasn't reading anymore. I hadn't read a book in 6 months. I wasn't listening to positive audios. I couldn't get through one. And I would go to conferences, or I would go through the motions of my businesses, and it's just another way to keep bread on the table. Okay. Well, anyway, Amy, my incredible wife, did probably the coolest thing that a wife can do for her husband, because we were going to speak at a conference, and at the conference there's probably 15,000 people there. Well, along that way, there's a lot of people that she basically knew that had influence in my life, or that had been part of our organization. For those that don't know, we own a large Amway organization. So they'd been part of our groups and organizations. And what Amy had done is she had taken 50 postcards addressed to me and put stamps on them. And that entire weekend, she would give cards to people she would see. And she says, hey, Vince is turning 50 in a couple months. This is January. Could you write him a nice little letter on here around March and send it to him? And these cards all started coming in. And I thought, oh, that's neat. Man, that's cool, It was reminding me that little dash between when we start life and end life, it had counted up for something. But you know what, Mario? It still wasn't resonating with me. Okay? I was still kind of in that funk. But one of my other coaches and one of my biggest influences in life, a guy named Joe Markowitz, he and I love baseball together. We've played in games together and stuff. And Joe and I both, been pretty good at hitting home runs out of major league ballparks as we rent these. And so Joe sent me a little thing, and he was 1 year older than me. He says, "Welcome to the 50 Club. It's really no different than the 49 Club." Okay. He goes, "Hey, let's finish strong. We still got dingers to hit." And I got to thinking, I said, there's a book on my bookshelf that I have not been able to get through the first chapter because one of my guys gave it to me when I was turning 40, and I never could get through the first chapter or two.
What book's
It was
that?
a book by Bob Buford, who's a Christian author who's passed on. He's went home to see Jesus now. But Bob Buford is a Christian author. He wrote a book called Finishing Well. Okay, he wrote a first book called Halftime, and then he wrote a book called Finishing Well. And I pulled that book off my shelf and I started reading it. Everything jumped off the pages. It jumped off the pages at me. I couldn't put it down. I'm highlighting. I'm taking notes in the margins. I'm putting Post-it notes in there so I can go back and find it. Better than I've done with any of my college textbooks. And what got to me, that flipped the switch for me at the age of 50, okay, was he talked about a football game, and he talked about nobody remembers who's leading in the first half. The end of the game is where legends are created, like Tom Brady. Tom Brady's legacy has been created at the end of football games, okay? So everybody, it doesn't matter where you are at halftime. It matters how you finish the game. He goes, and those individuals who have the most difficult transition, because great coaches make halftime adjustments. That's why Bill Belichick is so famous. He's never out of the game, no matter what the score is at the first half, because he's coming back with a plan in the second half, and probably video of how the other team plays. But anyway, nonetheless, okay, if it's a deflated ball or a bootleg video or just a new strategy, he's coming with. Okay, so, and he's got the greatest second half quarterback in the history of the NFL. Okay. But I said the people that have the hardest time making this transition from the first half of life to the second half of life, whenever you decide that may be 30, 35, 40, in my case, 50, because I still got 50 good years left to go. What am I going to do? Are those who give up the relentless pursuit of success by the world's standards in favor of the pursuit of significance in alignment with what God called you to do with your life, sowing in other people. See, when we stay wrapped up in ourselves, we make a very small package. And when I was living in the balance sheets versus the mission statement for my life, or the mission mindset, I had a balance sheet mentality versus a mission mindset. I was all wrapped up in myself and looking at just me and the sum total of what I had accomplished or accumulated at 50. So that's kind of what I mean. It's a long answer, but that's exactly what I mean.
It's a great answer, and it's got me thinking too, because no matter what happens with your life, how you grew up or whatever, it matters how you finish it and what you do with it in between, like you're saying. But it's so easy to forget, hey, here's what I was on track to do. Here's my dreams and goals and ambitions and everything. And you get that first roadblock, that success is supposed to be that straight line, and it looks like some screwed up fettuccine Alfredo or whatever that fell on the floor. And every day it's
It's a good way of putting it.
It's anyway.
Little Olive Garden fettuccine right there on the floor. It was mixed up to begin with, but now it looks like
you can't go wrong with Italian. But every day it's like this pursuit of, do I want to keep caring? It might go great, it might go bad, but am I going to give it another shot today? And there's so many detractors in the world that just want you to fail. How have you overcome those to continue on that path of significance and not give in to all the negativity, the SNIOPs, if you will?
Yeah, and I'm not immune to it, because if I allow myself to surround it, what I've done, I think, is I've been very fortunate to develop a good filter. And I just remember one of my mentors taught me many years ago. He said, don't take swimming lessons for drowning people. He says, if people don't have what you want or are in life where you want to be, their opinions don't really matter that much. John Calipari told me one time, if you spend enough time listening to the people in the stands, you'll eventually be sitting up there with them. And so, I've been very fortunate in that sense that I've had people that taught me how to put the antivirus program on this hard drive right here and be very selective about who I listen to. But it's still something I have to do, because our self-image, Mario, I mean, you're from what I remember, it's been a while since we've seen each other face to face, but you're in pretty darn good shape when I saw you last. At 57, I'm not, like a big, a Terminator type guy or anything, or bodybuilder, but I still work out, I still exercise, and I still control my diet, because, my muscles, even at 57, if I just, because let me tell you something, I hate to work out. I hate to go to the gym. I hate eating good. I love donuts. Okay.
Glazed chocolate,
and that's what I
sour
love.
cream, what kind?
Oh, just donuts. If I go to Chicago, I go to straight to Stan's Donuts, and I try one of each. But I'll tell you, the best donuts I ever had was in Nashville, Tennessee, Five Daughters Bakery. Buttercream croissant donuts, 100-layer donuts. That's their big claim to fame. Oh, unbelievable. But anyway, get back to, if you don't go to the gym and continue to stretch and exercise and push your muscles, and one day you just decide to quit working out because I'm just going to take a break for 2 years, okay? It's kind of like the guy that gets in that. Do you remember Josh Flogger, one of the guys on our team?
Yes, I do.
Josh was the guy we all kind of wish we looked like. The dude was just, he looked like he was chiseled out of stone. Plus, he was handsome. It's just totally unfair. Okay. So, but he's the guy that we all wish we looked like. Well, if we spend 2 years working in the gym and controlling our diet to where when we walk in the room, man, that dude works out. I mean, we're shredded. We got 8-pack, we're cut. We're just diesel. And we look in the mirror one day and we say, that's what I was going for. I'm done working out. I'm right. Here's where I want to be. Well, those muscles will eventually atrophy. And eventually, a year or two from now, you won't look like that anymore. Okay. Our self-esteem and self-image is exactly the same way. If we don't stretch it and put ourselves in a growing situation every single day, I said it a little bit earlier, apathy is mediocrity's weapon of choice. Our self-esteems will atrophy. And nothing, Mario, you and I have read a lot of the same books, as I've said before. You've read the quote that nothing in life, our quality of our relationships, our ability to produce income, our health, our well-being, our marriages, nothing ever outgrows our self-esteem. And if it does, it's only temporary, but subconsciously we self-sabotage it. So the way I've been able to overcome is I attacked my fears. When I was a young kid growing up in Preble County, Ohio, and I was easily picked on because I had fear of getting into fights because I was afraid of the unknown. And I was kind of a skinny little kid. Well, we had bullies in our school. Now, bullying wasn't a federal crime the way it is today. Back then, we grew up in an era where it was called a toughening up phase. You either stand up for yourself or you're going to get picked on. When you get tired of getting picked on enough, you'll finally stand up for yourself. And one of the things I found out about bullies is bullies traditionally are very weak, self-esteemed individuals that basically have to overcompensate by finding somebody smaller than them and picking on them, poking them in the chest, calling them some derogatory names in front of people because they know the guy's not going to fight back. Well, I was that guy that wouldn't fight back because I was afraid of getting beat up. And you know what? I became an easy target. But what I did find out later in life is once you actually stand up to the bully, and I'm not condoning violence, but once you stand up to the bully and defend yourself, now the bully thinks twice before he comes and picks on you again because now he's got to put up. Now he's got to prove himself. Well,
I can relate to that. Unfortunately, got picked on pretty much all through 1st through 9th grade and got to a point where it was like, I want to change something. I didn't know what it was. I wasn't really reading success books at that point, but it was just like, this kind of sucks and I want to be done with it. I'm going to change something. And I remember being in
Yeah.
band class, just sitting there, and I was asking my friends, paying attention and listening real well. I'm like, hey, what would you change about me? And some of them were like, well, speak up when you talk. Another one was like, walk straighter, you kind of hunch over, this and that. And it was just like, hey, tell me your perspective of me. What can I improve? I wasn't mean. I wasn't a bad person. I was just kind of there. And slowly but
Yep.
surely, like you put effort into something, magically it changes, overnight success. But it
Yep.
felt good. And I was like, huh, what else? What else? What else? And when you get on that path, it's like, what else? And,
Yeah.
20 years later, you're going, what else? And you just become better and better. And I believe with that, you can help more people, which is the real goal.
Right. Now, can I share with you the tie into this story?
Absolutely.
Okay. So now as an adult, and you asked about how did you overcome the naysayers? How did you overcome the people that, turn their backs on you? How you overcome the people, even any of your parents, saying, don't, you're wasting your college education. I just finished college. I graduated with a 4.0 GPA. I owned a health club and a tanning salon. That's how I put myself through college after the military. So my mom was so proud of me having that business card that said account executive, which just meant I was an employee. And but she was so thrilled about that. So when I get into network marketing and into the Amway business, basically she was one of the first naysayers. But I also realized she did it out of love because she cared about me, not because she was embarrassed. She was just loved me and she didn't want to see my feelings hurt. But so how did I overcome all that? Especially in one of the business models that probably gets the most negative of any business model out there, because my philosophy on that is because one, anybody can get involved with it, but two, it is exceptionally hard work to be successful in it. And so thousands more people get in that don't do well than people get in that actually do well. Okay. So my only thing is I had learned from those years of being picked on by bullies. And then when you finally stand up to them, fear is a spiritual bully. Fear is that invisible bully that doesn't take his finger and poke us in the chest up against the locker, but it puts that fiery little dart in our subconscious, causing us to be afraid of what other people might think, afraid of looking foolish, afraid of being like laughed at. Okay. And when you stand up to that spiritual bully of fear, it bugs you less and less and less, because in the spirit realm, it knows that it has no power over you. And it goes and seeks another timid soul or weaker victim. Because in my way of thinking is when you're called to do something great and you're called to do something that involves the lives of other people, you will face adversaries. You will face naysayers. But it's not because they have anything in particular about you. It's because they get the unction to give you a hard time about, because there's forces out there that don't want you to win and don't want you to succeed. Because if you do succeed, you make positive, impactful change on other people's lives. When you're able to sow into other people and give to other people, maybe you see marriages come back together. Amy and I we've been married 31 years now, as I mentioned earlier, but the day I met a different group of people that changed our lives, we were ready to get divorced. Okay, because we've been married for 2 years, dated for 4 or 5 years before that, and just realized, we just got whole different lives. We're going our different ways. And we never wanted kids. And now we've got 2 wonderful kids that are very empathetic individuals, very caring and compassionate kids, never given us an ounce of trouble, never even have been so much as even had a speeding ticket. I mean, they're just incredibly good kids, and they're going to go out and make impacts on the world on their own. Because, we were talking a little bit earlier about the state of our race relations in our country as they exist today. I think the foundation is really what we need to focus on, and that foundation begins at home. I've said this before. I don't believe we have a problem with racism in our country. I believe we have a spiritual problem. And when we take care of the foundation, because racism is hateful, racism is a spirit of hate. It's a spirit of evil. It comes from an evil place. Okay. And so when we can make a difference in the mothers and fathers, and we can bring families together and make a positive impact. And we can get, when mom and dad stay together, that little child doesn't grow up dragging baggage through his life with him that this was all my fault somehow. Because even though we tried to tell the kids that, they still drag that 50-pound weight with them all through life, of thinking if I'd been a better kid, this wouldn't have happened, because that's the spiritual bully that starts poking them with that fiery little dart into the subconscious. But when we can actually teach kids to love themselves and be proud of who they are and feel good about themselves, guess what they do in turn? They feel good about other people. They treat other people kindly. And that's the way we end up, solving a lot of our world's problems is one person at a time, and the impact that we make. So, Mario, what you were saying about what you do, hundreds and hundreds of shows now. The way I look at it is that you're being prepped and you're in training and you're going, everything, every step you take, every video you do, every book that you write, every little speech that you give and talk to a group, it puts you one notch closer to what God's ultimately got called for your life, for what you're actually called, designed to do. And 10 years from now, when you're standing on stage in front of 15,000 people who've all paid a couple $100s to come hear you talk, you'll think again, that's why I had to go through all those struggles. That's why I had to go through those people laughing at me. That's why I had to go through the negativity. That's why, because it made me stronger, it made me tougher, and it built character on the inside. So you're on the right track. You're very much on the right track. Through the books that you've written, the places that you've talked, and stuff. I know you were probably kind of nervous about it when you began. Am I right?
Very much so. And every step of the way. But I always think back to even in high school, the people that I just talked to, that I helped just one-on-one, maybe at the locker. And then that gave me the energy to, talk to a bigger group, and then it was a small room, then it was a larger room, then it was this, and I was freaking out of my mind even before I started this show. And the truth is, I had done 3,000 plus videos, live streams, Facebook, whatever.
Yeah.
And people kept saying, sorry I couldn't make your event, sorry I couldn't make your thing, I love your show. And I'm like, I don't have a show, I don't have an event. I was always promoting everyone else's until I had my own, and I was like, oh my gosh, I've been doing this for 8 years. I just never claimed it, if you will. And yeah. God gave me the vision for this August of 2018, right after Dad passed. And I was thinking, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? Because I plan on living over 100 also. And I was like, I got Act 1. We're going to count this as Act 1. Act 2 is starting. And, Act 3, and I go, what am I going to do? So it wasn't the second half of my life, but Act 2 was starting, and I go, there was someone at church, and on eainterviews.com/about, I have the video of the church. You can actually see me in the first row, but he was talking about, are you honoring God in your work? And I was like, mostly, kinda, no, not really. And if you get honest with yourself, it's amazing. And I was just thinking, I just felt so depressed, so sad, so whatever you want to call it, lost Dad. And I'm like, what am I going to do? And I thought about it, and I go, I've always loved helping people, even in school, speaking, video, design, everything. And I started thinking about all the pieces, and I go, oh my gosh, I need to start the show. And I called my first guest back, and it was interesting because the first guest I ever had on the show, I made a list, and like I said, you were in the original list. And I was like, if this ever happens, wow. I'm just dream building. And I put a list together of 405 people, so that way I didn't need to think about booking people every week. I just made a list. I go, this will get me through the first year. And the Tony, who was episode 1, someone had me on their radio show, and I sent out an email that was like, if you want to call in and ask questions, again, he thought I was bringing guests on my show. I go, I apologize. I must have written it the wrong way. When I have a show, you'll be the first. And it was about 9 months later, September 11th of 2018, I called him because I wanted to anchor the day in something positive for us here in the U.S. And I called him, and he's like, "Hey, how's it going?" I go, "Guess what?" He goes, "You're kidding me." And I'm like, "I'd love to have you on." And we filmed like 2 days later. And as they say, the rest
Yeah,
is history. But,
that's all.
I still, I tell people all the time, let go and let God, because, yeah, I had no clue what I was doing.
Yeah,
I had never done a show before.
yeah.
So what?
Well, well. You say a good point. I just had this conversation with somebody the other day, and about following our spirits, the Holy Spirit's unctions within our souls. And the guy asked me, well, how's that work? I said, look, I said, I heard the term "let go and let God" many years ago, or "turn it over." I had no idea what that meant, because I was a heathen. When I started coming around these people, I had no clue what that meant. But what I've come to learn is, and I'll tell you a simple little story to illustrate. My son is an IT kid, and he loves video production and design. That's what he studied in college, and and so, but he was always a Steve Jobs fan. And of course, we all know what Steve Jobs has contributed to society. The other part that we seem to know now that all these videos and books and biographies have come out is that he was really a pretty crappy human being. Okay, he's like, he never treated people nice. He stabbed people in the back. He took advantage of everybody he could take advantage of. And nobody really ever has a whole lot of good to say about Steve Jobs, other than he was great at giving a speech. And but I wanted my son to read Steve Jobs' book, and I said, when you read it, I want you to tell me what his greatest gift and talent was. I said, and come back to me when you've read the biography. So he comes back to me about a month or so later. He goes, okay, I think I know. It was a trick question. He was never going to get it. So he said, well, he was great with infrastructure. Nope. He had good vision. Nope. All leaders, great leaders, have vision. He was good at, so finally he gets, okay, I give up. What was it? I said he had the ability to follow his unctions without getting caught in analysis paralysis. When he got an unction to do something, he immediately acted upon it. Now, we don't know how many ones he failed at, but our world was changed because of the ones he succeeded at. And Mario, here's my way of thinking, is that you and I we're both people of faith, okay? Is that God is going to get accomplished what he wants to get accomplished in this world through men and women of faith. He doesn't say specifically anywhere in his word that it's only for born-again Christians who are putting money in the tithe plate. It's men and women of faith. And see, there's so many wonderful, wonderful people that God would have rather gave that unction to. In fact, he probably did, but it just, it's too big. It's too scary. I can never do that. Okay, fear, right? Fear of the bully, the spiritual bully, okay? Nah, you're not capable of anything like that. There's plenty of great IT people that are born-again Christians that serve their church, and God would have loved to channel all that through. But unfortunately, many of them are like I used to be. They're pew potatoes, or part of the frozen chosen, okay? they're great
Pew
in
potatoes?
church. Pew potatoes are the frozen chosen, okay? They just won't take action, okay? So he goes, okay, I'm going to make this happen. Now, we look because of this little thing called a smartphone, okay? You realize the gospel can hit all four corners of the earth in a moment's notice, that you can look up a scripture in any language, in a moment's notice and stuff. And you know how important that is in the whole big picture of things, the way that the word, everybody, the gospel is heard by every person in the world. So, and it helps us connect with people. Now, granted, it's also opens gateways to a lot of bad, depending on the person that uses it. Okay, it's where your heart is. Okay, you can look at a lot of stuff you shouldn't look at. That's my big thing with my kids. I'm always kind of want to make sure they're looking at the wrong stuff. So dad has a watchful eye. Okay, but because of guys like I remember one of the movies I saw with Steve Jobs, and at the end of the movie he's having an argument with his daughter, and they're in a parking garage, and Steve Jobs is supposed to be getting on stage to give a talk, but him and his daughter get into this fight, this argument. And he goes out and he talks with her. And she's telling him what a crappy dad he is. And he said, "But I gave you guys all the money. I've given you so much." Because, "Ain't that, Dad? Because I wanted you to be present. I didn't want your presence. I wanted you to be present." Okay? That was basically just the conversation. And Mario, you've probably seen the movie where he says, he just looks at her. He's not even paying attention to her. He's like looking at a thing called a Walkman that was on her belt. He goes, "I'm going to put 1,000 songs in your pocket." And she goes, "What?" He says, "Why are we carrying around old technology like that?" And that was the inspiration for the smartphone. Now, I don't know if that's exactly how, but it's a great part of the movie.
But
Okay?
still, at what cost? I mean, she's bearing her soul and saying, "I just want you present," and he's still zoning out at that point.
We know. Absolutely, I'm on the same page with you. Lousy father, lousy human being. Okay, but because he acted upon his unctions, he
But
changed.
thanks for saving us from cassettes. Like,
yeah. Well, you're a young buck, man. You're a kid, man. I grew up through 8-track tapes. Okay,
I'm familiar with those. I remember
God.
some of my first boat rides. They had 8 tracks in them, and I even got cassettes. You wanna know something crazy?
Yeah. What?
I used to ask for cassettes for gifts because I would watch shows and make commentary on them.
Really?
And I think I still have some around. I'm considering releasing them as some special episodes or something. But have you ever heard of In Living Color?
Oh yeah. Yeah,
I had a
awesome
microphone thing and would comment on that and other shows and just be like, wow.
Yeah. So a lot of famous people came out of that show. Jim Carrey, that was his first show. He was mainframe on. He's Fire Marshal Bill.
Yeah, J-Lo was one of the dancers, and
right.
Jamie Foxx, he had his own show in the earlys. It's interesting. So when I look at successful people like yourself, it's like it doesn't matter where you start. So many of them, you can start off here and, the overnight success of, let's take celebrities and movie stars, oh my gosh, look at their breakout career. Yeah, well, go to IMDb and look at the 18 other movies over 16 years they were in before you recognized them.
Yeah, most overnight success stories are 10 years in the making.
That's it. Well, missed that train.
Well, yeah, Malcolm Gladwell's, The Outliers, 10,000 Hours. If you ever read that book, most greatness is achieved with 10,000 dedicated, focused hours on that craft. So, with what you're doing now, Mario, I promise you're so much on the right track that one day you're going to find yourself standing on a big stage where people have paid incredible amounts to come hear you talk and share. And what's really interesting is going back to why I started telling that story about following the unctions is when our spirit moves us to sow into somebody or call into somebody or that gives us an opportunity to have an experience, the one that grows the most from it is us. Because I find that, like a 5-gallon bucket of water, Mario, if you fill it up to the top and you take a big thirsty sponge and you stick it down in that bucket and you squeeze and you soak up as much water as you can, eventually it doesn't hold any more water. You've got to pull that sucker out. You've got to wring that sponge out dry so you can soak up more. And I believe that God gives us opportunities to serve people and give to people, because when we wring out our personal sponge, it creates capacity so he can actually pour more of his goodness in there as he directs us along the path of the journey of what he wants us to ultimately become. And as long as we're living in pursuit and moving forward and trying to do our best to reach out and help other people, to make a difference to people, to create extraordinary experiences in the interactions that we have with each individual that God puts in our pathway. And so I believe that, and here's the other thing too that Kevin Brown says in the Hero Effect: heroes help, hero being an acronym, heroes help people, help people with no contractual obligations. They help people unconditionally. He says the E is they create exceptional experiences for every individual that they serve and give to in the here and the now. Because as I said, if we don't master the here and now. God never trusts us with the next. You know, and the R is oh, holy moly, I just forgot what the R was. Uh, I just totally forgot what the R was. So I know O was for optimism. So anyway,
It'll come
so
back to you.
sorry
You got a
about
good
that.
brain.
Yeah, later on I'll come back to it. What was it? What was the R? I just totally forget what it was. Oh, they accept the responsibility. Everything good and bad in our life that happens is our responsibility. If we find ourselves in bad situations, we made bad deals or we've screwed up relationships, it's our responsibility. Heroes accept responsibility for their circumstances in life. They don't blame external circumstances, socioeconomic upbringings, because every excuse that you have for not being where you want to be in life, there's an example somebody that's overcame exactly the same experience, if not only even worse. So
let me ask you this. So, always have a servant's heart. Heroes always are looking to help people without contractual obligation. How have you found as you've progressed on? And, one of my favorite times was starting off a business or another business or a division or whatever. Like when I started the show, it's like that brand new phase where it's like, hey, nothing can go wrong because nothing's established. That's
true. Yeah.
startup. It's fun, but how have you found to move past that where you want to serve everyone, but you're also aware of your own time and you're not doing stuff you shouldn't be doing or wasting your time doing, but still might be in of service? Does that make sense? I'm trying to articulate best I can, but basically, how do you still stay in service as you grow, but you're not wasting your own time, but you're not just like, oh, I'm too big for this, basically?
Yeah, that's really good because there was a point in time where I was like that, where I was kind of getting high on my own supply, so to speak.
Scarface. Nice.
Yeah, Scarface, right? But I was really, because as you know, the nature of our business is a breeding ground for egos. And of course, as we know, from a spiritual standpoint, pride and ego are the beginning of a downfall of any, team, organization, individual. Everything that goes bad is because of pride. That's the root cause of it and where it starts. But so yeah, I went through a phase like that where everybody was giving me a lot of accolades and praise because of the nature of our business, and I was getting a little full of myself, and that's where I really kind of lost focus, my true north, so to speak. My compass started spinning around like crazy rather than having one laser focus. Now, the other thing, Mario, is that you may or may not know about me is I'm not clinically diagnosed, but I know I have a little bit of ADD. Okay. Because in the personality books, you have the sanguines, the melancholies, the phlegmatics, and the cholerics. Cholerics, if you look at animals, cholerics are like German shepherds. They are focused on one job and one job only, and that's protect the family. Okay, that they don't make a lot of jokes. They're very taskmaster. They're very matter of fact. Engineers make great cholerics. Me, on the other hand, I'm kind of a sanguine personality, which means that I get easily distracted. So sanguines are kind of the cats of humans, because we can be distracted by a shiny ball, and then, we're all of a sudden we're over here, we're looking at something totally different. What I've become is I've developed self-awareness over the years, and I've learned to forgive myself and not compare myself to other individuals who I admire the powerful cholerics in them. God's got me where he wants me. He's directing my path the way he wants it to direct it. And so I've learned to relax with it and let go. Okay. And maybe that comes with age and a little bit of emotional maturity. I said the other day, I was talking somewhere and I said, I'm in, late 50s now. I said, when I was in my 20s, this is how our perspective changes. When I was in my 20s, I was about impressing the ladies, about the car I drove, about how big my muscles were. I was bought my shirts a size too small. That was, that was the way I was in my 20s. In my 30s, it's about impressing all the guys I went to school with, how successful I was becoming. Okay, that's because you want to be a big shot. That's So it's 20s is about impressing the ladies, 30s is about impressing your old high school friends and the people you grew up with. In your 40s, you get a little bit more settled. It's about impressing your family, about what a great provider you are, you know, impressing your kids with the vacations you can take them on, you know, being a provider. That's what your focus becomes. Now, in my 50s, it's about impressing my proctologist. You know, if he gives me a good exam and gives me a thumbs up, I'm good, man. That's all I care about now is just being in good health. So your perspective changes.
That's hilarious. But I appreciate the perspective on it, and I think you had a little segue into that joke a little bit, but
See, ADD, I totally forgot. Okay, I just think there it was. I got distracted by the shiny ball.
but it's great to know the
I guess so focused on trying to tell my joke.
it's great to know the perspective on that, because if you don't know what you're really going for or the reason, what's the point of doing it? Or if you're going for the wrong thing and you're unaware, I mean, that I think it was Jeff that said it's not what you don't know that'll hurt you, but what you it's not what you don't know that will hurt you, but what you believe to be true and is false.
Thank you. Yeah, that's absolutely right. And once again, that's learning, you know, being smart enough to learn how to listen to, or what to listen to, or who to listen to. It was like your question earlier about that's, you know, staying focused on one thing at a time. Yeah, I am not the type of individual that I can stay laser locked, you know, forever. But because I do have self-awareness, I make up as much as I can when I'm in that season of being really locked in, versus when I'm distracted by something. And I realized, fortunately, hopefully I've created enough of a mess that needs my attention, so it kind of forces me to stay focused. You know, it's like my wife and I were having kids and our teams were starting to form up. You know, I knew I had 9 months to put another team of people in that needed my wife's attention, because when that baby came, that was going to consume her world. I had to create an environment for her to be actively engaged in our business, because there were ladies who needed her, and she felt a sense of responsibility to that. So during those times that I'm not as focused, I'm still very focused on serving people, because I realize that the moment I take my eyes off of giving to the individuals and spending time with the ones that need my time, you know, at that point in time, my self-esteem starts to atrophy, okay, because I'm creating capacity every day that I pour into somebody. So God can pour a little bit more of himself in there. You know, here's my take is, you know what, because we're in a people business, when it comes to that, everybody deserves our love. Not everybody deserves our time. And so you can love people without giving them a lot of time. Mario, you know that, you know, there was a term that we came up with years ago called, and I'm going to say it very carefully so I'm not misquoting, a term we came up with called ask, A-S-K, ask holes. Okay. These were the people that constantly kept coming to us every 3 to 4 months, wanting our advice, wanting our whip counsel, wanting our, you know, game plan. And you look back and they never taken any of your advice in the previous game plans or the previous counsel and stuff. They just wanted to actually spend time around you. So one of the things that I've done, you know, too, is when I do have that free time and I'm driving back from somewhere, maybe I'm coming back from Michigan, you know, and all of a sudden I get the unction to give Bobby a call. Well, I'll just pick up the phone. And most times it goes straight to voicemail. But it gives me a chance to say, hey, Bobby, this is Vince, just thinking about you, buddy. Hope you're doing well. You know, because Oprah Winfrey, in her career, interviewed over 37,000 people. And when she was done, she retired from her show. Larry King interviewed her, and, you know, Larry King's hunched over on the, you know, at the TV. He goes, Oprah. He goes, 37,000 people. He goes, did they all share anything in common? And Oprah says, absolutely. She goes, at the end of every interview, when they took their microphones off, they all asked the same question: how'd I do? Because they sought validation. People seek validation. They want to know you listen to them. They want to know that you care about them. They want to know that they matter and that they're important. If we go back to what we were talking about earlier about the state of our world today and the way it is, we live in the greatest country on earth. I've been all over the world. I know this is the greatest country on earth. Okay, we have unlimited opportunity to be whatever we want to be in this world. We may have to work harder to overcome certain circumstances, but it's a free pathway, at least currently in the state of our affairs. Hopefully it stays that way. Okay. We have the ability to compete. We have the ability to overcome ourselves, to leave our past behind and shed our baggage. Okay. We don't have to drag the very worst of our lives into all the relationships that we encounter throughout the rest of our lives. We have unlimited opportunity. Okay. So it's a great country. It's a great opportunity. Okay. You are what you want to make of it. Okay. So when we encounter people, when we see people, if we can get people to feel better about themselves, and each of us can be ambassadors for what God's called us to do, He'll take care of all the rest, Mario. He'll move all the other chess pieces on the board for you. You know a little bit more about my story. Every person, every leader in my organization that became great, I haven't had to do much work for, but they're rewards for my cheerful, because God searches for a cheerful giver. That's what He looks for. And He's not just talking about only tithing your money, be a cheerful giver. Tithe your time, tithe your love, tithe your service to other individuals. I know you do things for people because you're a giver. I know you do things for people when nobody ever knows, nobody ever sees it and stuff. And why has God blessed you and, as the way He has? Because you're one of His people. Like I said earlier, you're not a pew potato. Okay, you're a frontline warrior. Okay, out there making a difference. And so that's just my simple-minded philosophy on life. And that's why I'm happy at 57, and I'm not, growing a ponytail, getting a Mazda Miata, and looking for some girl that's 30 years old to replace my wife. Because I feel good about who I am already.
Well, that's not a simple-minded take on it. It might be a simple explanation, but that was very deep and very much needed. I know Expert Authority World it's resonating, and it's a great way for me to go into and ask you the next question before we go to the second half. And I call this the Wheel of Whatever. It always stops where I need it to, and it's always landing on the right
question. I wondered what that was, because I saw that on one of your other videos, but I couldn't get any sound. Like, what the heck is that?
If you want the truth, it's a hamster wheel that I painted. There's actually 2 episodes that I was painting it on. But I
figured.
No, go ahead. You figured?
I figured as much, because I also saw one of your early videos where you explained where your microphone swag it comes from.
Oh, well, this one's a real one now, but yeah, that, start where you are. It's why
right.
Name the second half the imperfect action round. Too many, I don't let my clients off the hook either. They're like, well, but I'm like, you started off about 100 times better than I did, and you're asking me for the advice on this. Trust me, you're going to be fine. Don't worry about the details. But I created this as a fun little whatever, and sometimes I interject some lightheartedness if it needs it, and sometimes if someone's very lighthearted the whole time, I might inject, there's been many episodes I was like, so, moon landing, true or false? And it's just like, whatever, most of them I make up on the fly. I do have about a dozen written out, but I came up with a custom one for you, and like I said, it always ends up where it needs to. I need to stand for it. It's in work in progress. But with talking about the world, the state of affairs, where everyone's at, people's hearts, and how God is getting taken out of everything, unfortunately. If we were to put God back in the schools and people were to go back to 50, 100 years ago no, even longer than that, like when the country was founded, if we went back to a society that trusted God, that stopped the hate, stopped all this other stuff, how many years do you think it would take to turn the U.S. and essentially the world around?
Well, Boy, that's such a deep question, man. That is so good, man. You put some thought into that. Uh, First
Thank
of all,
you.
let me say, okay, so yeah, you bet, man. Let's pretend that we go back to that 100 years. But let's go back to that 100 years. Let's put the disclaimer on there. Let's go back to that 100 years without all the bad that we had in the 100 years, because we're also quantifying this by saying we're God focused. Okay, and because now it's at the forefront of the movements that we're going through right now. We're going back and we're really talking about slavery and all those type of things, which was bad. I mean, I didn't have any relatives that owned slaves, and I mean, I'm pretty much white trash background. My whole life. That's where I came up from. Where I grew up. When I did something dumb, my dad would look at his friends and he said, white trash never falls far from the dumpster, and they will all just shake their head. So but going back through our heritage, we were all poor and broke, and nobody had anything. But so let's go back 100 years and eliminate that part. Okay. Um, I think you're still looking at a shift that would take a few years. I mean, but in God's time, if you first of all, we're acknowledging that number one, you believe in God. Okay, so if you believe in God, you automatically believe in God's word, because one doesn't exist without the other. Okay, so I believe in God, but I also understand some people don't. Okay, so but we're talking strictly believer to believer. Okay, so heart to heart here. So in God's word, he says, in God's time, a day is as a year is as a day, or 1,000 years is as a day is as 1,000 years. So in his time frame, it's hard to say, but it would definitely make things better, because you look at the abortions that take place now since God's been out of our society. You look at the split families. Mario, one of the things I face now, and I think one of the reasons I'm much softer than I used to be with people, is because I realize that most of the young men that come into my business or I'm introduced to, it's a 67% chance that they grew up in a split family home. Okay. I was blessed, and you were blessed to grow up where mom and dad were home, and dad taught us values and taught us principles, and, basically taught us how to treat people and taught us what respect means. And, so we need to get, like I said, we need to get a lot of what just basic goodness into people back. And like I said, I believe God is the foundation of that. To shift that whole thing where men stay with their wives. And, now granted, there are certain circumstances that are, if that husband is abusing the woman and okay, totally different story. Okay. We were just talking. Okay. But, because that happened too back then, and women didn't talk about it. Okay. Out of fear. Okay. But, yeah, I think if we brought God, I think if we brought the into the current, I think that would be a good start. But who knows? We may be so far gone now. But here's everything. Nothing surprises God. He already knows how this whole thing's supposed to work. He already knows the story. He already knows the ending of the book, and this is all part of it. And so that's why I said, we're not, we're not living with COVID PTSD right now. We're not all hunkered down and refusing to go to stores and wearing hazmat suits. And now we're healthy. We've got good immune systems up here and good immune systems in here. So, God's in control. He already knows the date that I'm supposed to, go be with him. So anyway. That's probably not totally the answer you were looking for, but that's just my take on it. Because, like I said, you were deeper than my thought process went with that question.
Well, I did appreciate the answer, and I do like it because it is God's timing, and I just thought it would be fun to think about, turning everything around for the better and in everyone's best interest, because I've found, and maybe this is me projecting, I always want everything now. I love my ambition, but sometimes it's like that whole patience side. It's like, just chill out a little bit, and that's what I've been practicing more and more and more. But at the same time, you have to realize things aren't going to happen in 7 days or 14 or 20. I mean, maybe wrapping a gift, maybe get in the mail or something. But when you're talking about helping a person, change their thought process, or let alone a city, country, or society, let alone the world, yeah, it
Yeah.
might take a couple of months. So just
You can't turn an aircraft carrier around on a dime. It takes miles to turn an aircraft carrier 180 degrees. So imagine how long it takes to turn an entire nation and culture that's been programmed. I when I would travel overseas, uh, people would ask, why do certain nationalities or certain religions hate America so much? I said, it's not because they were born that way. It's because they've been programmed that way. And if you're a little child, the only thing you've ever had written on your hard drive is that's evil, that's bad, then that becomes your reality. That becomes your truth. Um, I was having a conversation with one of my guys recently, but we were talking about the issue with racism, and I already told you how I feel about that. I believe it's a spiritual problem. But I think some of the worst racism that we can project is those parents that teach their kids, hey, welcome to the world. Now, let me just tell you, it's all stacked against you because of the color of your skin. So sorry, it just ain't gonna be able to make it because of the way we are. Well, that kid grows up being bitter and thinking that, well, the whole world's stacked against me. So that kid grows up rebellious in some cases and angry, suspicious of everybody that tries to reach out a hand. On the other hand, other parents raise their kids, they can be whatever you want to be. The world's unlimited. Go get it. And I work with a lot of those guys that are high achievers.
See, and that's the cool thing about the mind is everyone has the same brain, and you can program it to do whatever you want. Even if you did grow up that way, I love talking to people that have turned it around. And, I didn't grow up that way, but like I said, I got picked on and bullied till 9th grade. I mean, I could have just not been like, hey, how can I improve myself? But just been like, oh, this is where I'm at. I'm kind of not the best, but I'm not the worst. I'm just kind of here. I mean, that's I think that's a personal hell, is when you're stuck in mediocrity, kind of in the middle of different things.
Oh, yeah. What I said earlier, apathy is mediocrity's weapon of choice. So what's the definition of apathy? This is the way things are. Yes, I'm fine. I'm comfortable.
It reminds me of this joke. It's like, what's the difference between apathy and ignorance? And it's like, I don't know and I don't care.
That's a good one. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'm thoroughly enjoying this. We're going to thank our sponsor and come back for the second half with the imperfect action round.
Gotcha.
Invest automatically, save for later, and spend today.
In 2012, Acorn set out on a mission to help anyone save and invest. Today, we've helped over 3 million people take control, grow, and invest in their unlimited potential. And so we ask ourselves, what's next? Now it's time to make it even easier to grow your money. Introducing Acorns Spend, a checking account and debit card with Acorns built in, because you deserve better. It's a better card that helps you save and invest every time you spend. Set aside some money every time you buy, well, anything. See, now your roundups happen in real time. It's a better card that helps you earn more money. Use it when you shop with participating brands and restaurants, and they automatically invest in your future, as much as 10%, just because. It's a better card that comes with an investment account, and a retirement account, and all digital banking. It's a better card that looks as good as it works, because yes, you deserve better. Invest for your future, save for later, earn more money, and now spend smarter with the only debit card that saves, invests, and earns for you. The future is yours. This is Acorns Spend.
/Acorns. And we are back with the imperfect action round. Vince, are you ready to take imperfect action?
All right, let's do it. Hey, I got one question to ask you before you do, though.
What's that?
Okay. Well, I apologize if I offended you by talking about not wearing a mask and all that, because, I see that, you've got your mask on, and, so hey, it's
where's
a mask,
that even from? I know which one you're talking about, but holy smokes.
Go on. Go on.
That is hilarious. And I wanted to touch on the whole, we're on the second half, but the truth is it's closer to 90 to 95%. And here's one thing I love about business and life. You can do what you want. It doesn't matter what age you are, because I've done hundreds of these and none is actually 50% in. I let it roll, and this is the imperfect action round, 60-second rapid fire answers.
Okay.
The first one is, what is the fastest path to the cash?
Fastest path to the cash, pursue excellence, let the cash follow you and chase you down.
Excellent. Number 2, what is the biggest problem you see your prospects making and the fastest way for them to fix it?
Listening to influences, like taking swimming lessons from drowning people, listening to people that have no concern. If the people you're listening to are not going to pay your bills, if you lose your job and you're unable to perform, if you get injured at work and they won't come in and take care of your wife and pay for the car payments and stuff, then appreciate their advice, but don't listen to them. Find somebody in life who's in life where you want to be, and learn to actually develop a mentor protege relationship. Good mentors will not make you do anything. They will not tell you what you have to do, but they'll give you perspective. And if you can walk through the minefield after somebody rather than being the first guy through it, you have a much better chance of surviving this game of life.
Excellent. Love that. Number 3, what is the best way to maximize customer lifetime value?
This is one we've been focused on ever since this whole quarantine lockdown. So when I basically talk to my teams and we basically call to play, we said, look, there's going to be those of you that come out of this with the quarantine sheen, or you come out with COVID PTSD. What you do with this opportunity, reach out to your customers, see how they're doing. People don't want to be served or sold, but they want to be served. Check with people, check in on them out of sincerity. Nothing unites a country, a team, an organization, a family like a common enemy. And this COVID was the common enemy. So it's not unusual to reach out to people, check on their well-being. Check on lost customers that used to do business with you, but don't do business with you now. Hey, I'm just thinking about you, man. Just want to know how you and the family are holding up on this. Do you guys need anything? And stuff. Then the last one, check on those customers that never became actual customers. In other words, the lost opportunities. Mike Tyson, when he got out of prison in 1995, re-signed with promoter Don King. Jim Gray interviewed him, and Don King had stolen millions from him before he went to prison. And Jim Gray said, Mike, why did you re-sign with Don King? Mike Tyson said, when I was in prison, I had nothing to offer anybody. The only person that came and seen me was Don King. When you invest emotional equity into people, the dividend is in relational currency. And that's customers, that's family, that's individuals. People appreciate being appreciated.
And you're saying I was going deep.
I get a good one every now and then.
That's phenomenal. You mentioned a few already, but I want to ask you, what books have made the biggest impact on your life?
Well, that's easy. You and I share a common theme in some of these books. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, one of the first books my mentor ever gave to me. Probably read it 10 times over the last 30 years. I get something different every time I read a book because I'm at a different place mentally than I was before. So that's one of the books. Hacking Leadership by Mike Myatt, who's a Forbes syndicated columnist. One of the best leadership books I've ever read. And Mario, you and I have both read all John Maxwell books. In fact, the last John Maxwell book I read was 21 Irrefutable Ways that this book sounds like all my other books. But I love John Maxwell. So we've had him in to speak to our groups. Great guy. Enjoyed his books. But Hacking Leadership was a fresh take on leadership, the modern day individuals. It was really phenomenal. I probably plagiarized it accidentally many times because I probably read it 2 or 3 times. I took notes on the whole book. I filled up a comp book on notes on that particular book, Hacking Leadership. Another book was His Needs, Her Needs, How to Building an Affair-Proof Marriage. 10 years at 35, I had read every leadership book that you could possibly read. The books I never read were marriage books. And I was stuck at a plateau and I couldn't get over the plateau. And I was just like, and finally I started reading marriage books, and that book totally opened my eyes to how I was not giving my wife the exact type of fuel to make her tank run that made my tank run. And because opposites attract, because we're attracted to the strengths that we recognize subconsciously as weaknesses in us, vice versa. But our love languages are different, and we express our love languages differently.
I was just thinking of that one too, the 5 love languages.
5 love languages, yeah, that was an incredible book. Last 2 books out of 35 years, or 30 years, 20 since I was 25. I've been reading 3 books a month, okay? Let me grab one here real quick. So, this book right here by Travis Bradberry, Emotional Intelligence 2.0, was a game changer in my life. I was flying to San Francisco 2 years ago because I started a new client out there, and I left my book home. I'd seen this guy advertise his book on LinkedIn a few times, and some of his quotes were on there. And so I picked it up, and I saw it wasn't really a hard book to read. So I picked up the book, read the whole thing on the flight to San Francisco with a highlighter. Came back from San Francisco a few days later, and I got through about half of it before I fell asleep. This book totally caused me to change the way I relate to people and the way I understand people. Once I understand how people are wired the way they are and why they act the way they do, and stuff, I understood it. Mario, here's the thing you'll love about this book. My IQ is maybe, I don't know, I didn't never measure it, but I'm average. Maybe 100. I don't know what average is. I'm average. But a guy that started me in business, Alan Latiger, his IQ is up around like 160, 180. I mean, he was studying to be a neurosurgeon at the time that he started his own business. So he's way up there. He was magna cum laude at Ohio State. I was a 4.0 student at a junior college. Okay. I learned that IQ is not something you can adjust. You either have it or you don't. But emotional intelligence, EQ, you can develop it. And the people that have the greatest success, that seem to do the least, have brilliant EQs. EQ becomes more important to your long-term success, understanding relationships. And it's the ability to be able to navigate the changing currents of personalities in a company and an organization, and be able to inject empathy in every relationship. That's the definition of EQ.
It sounds like the social acuity and situational awareness.
Situational awareness too. And the last book I mentioned, these are my top 5, right? Was Hero Effect by Kevin Brown. Okay. Unbelievable book. You get on Amazon. It's just, I can't say enough about how much this book totally changed my life and my business since last March. We injected this book into our organizations immediately. And that's why over the last 4 months, we've had the record growth that we've had in 18 years in the midst of a pandemic. We've had record growth in our business and stuff because people got this, and we're in the business of relationships, and all sales is relationships. So those are my 5.
And I see you got the shirt there too.
Yeah. I got that Kevin shirt. Like I said, I've given away 30 of his books, so my reward was he sent me a free T-shirt.
The world needs more heroes. No, the world needs your hero.
That's exactly right. In other words, and Kevin will say it too, so I don't mean to steal his talk, but at some point in time in our lives when we were little kids and stuff, we believed we could fly. We believed we were Superman.
I still do.
Batman. Yeah. But as kids, we dressed up like our favorite superheroes. Now, nobody dressed up like Aquaman, because what the heck are you going to do as Aquaman? Aquaman. Walk around with your mom's spatula, you know. And so it's really nobody want to be Aquaman, but everybody either want to be Batman, and every kid want to be Superman. At some point in time, we fashioned a cape around our neck and we started jumping off stairs. For me, it was my mom and dad's red satin bed sheet that I pulled off the bed. Okay, that told a story all of its own. But that was as I was wearing that around the neighborhood, my mom caught me running around with her bed sheet, you know, and it told tales that shouldn't be told in the trailer park. But I was basically grounded. It said you can't fly anymore. Okay, and I think they burned Superman's cape at that point. But nonetheless, if you could go back and have a conversation with that 8-year-old version of yourself, you know, the question I would ask him is, when did you forget you could fly? You know, when did you forget you were created as a superhero?
Wow.
You know, Clark Kent's greatest kryptonite was he chose to be Clark Kent more than he chose to be Superman. Our kryptonite is our insecurities. Fear of what other people think, fear of, you know, people are going to laugh at us, mistakes of the past, shame of the past. And so that's our kryptonite, is our insecurities. So tremendous book. And by the way, I stole most of that right from this book because I read it so much. It just kind of comes out. So, but
wow,
that's
hard hitting. It's something I've always said is, at what age do we go from being afraid of the dark to afraid of the light?
Oh, that's good right there.
It is. It's inside of us, and we, you know, Clark Kent's biggest kryptonite was he spent more time being Clark Kent than Superman.
Yeah. Well done, Grasshopper. So
that's pretty
came
hard.
Up with a good one.
That hit me hard. Wow. As always, you always deliver, and I'm very appreciative, and thank you for your time, Vince.
Mario, let me thank you. Okay. Number one, let me tell you I'm proud of you, because I watched you come up in the business. I was disappointed to see you kind of go down a different path, but I understand now that you found a calling. I imagine your dad would be so stinking proud of you and stuff. I'm proud of the man you become, from a man who spent his whole life writing to know his son has written 3 to 4 books, and the last book he written was a love letter to him and stuff. You know, you are living the dream because you're living in pursuit of something much bigger than yourself. Keep it up and stuff. That day is going to come, and the only thing I ask is that when it does happen is you send me a picture. Somebody shoots for you from backstage where you're standing up with a microphone, and there's a complete audience out there that have came from all over to hear you talk, to basically sow into them, to give everything you've got, to help leave them better off than they were just before you found them, from that moment you come on stage to the moment you leave. That's the definition of impact. And we can make it right where we are, no matter where we come from, socioeconomically, race, religion. You know, we can make an impact right where we are right now by striving to make every single person's life better than it was before they came in contact with us, and create an extraordinary experience for every human being. So thank you very much, Mario.
Thank you. And I still have a dream of you getting one of the shots.
So there you go. Maybe we'll do it together one day. Maybe we'll both be on stage one day. Somebody take it from both of us.
Work in progress. We're just getting started.
All right, buddy. Take care, pal.
Thank you, Vince. All right, Expert Authority World. We have another great episode here today. I'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day, and God bless.